On here, and I'm coming to you with this month's video, some little video insights. And this week, I'm actually going to be taking a look at why experiences are critical to learning. And I think this is an important thing, especially in an age and time where so much is based on information that's going around, what people are sharing, what is being said, and it gets very hard out there to determine things. And a lot of people think they have a lot of wisdom based on various things that they read, based on things that are on the internet and social media. Um, but most people don't have true wisdom. And this is really a big differentiating factors. And this piece about life experiences, this is where we really come into true wisdom. And especially on our spiritual path, if we never met a challenge along the way, it would be very, very difficult for us to understand what victory is about, for example. Um, we would have a limited understanding of things without our experiences in life. And for those that don't know, I write a book every year. It's called The Code Journey, and it's a daily guide for living on Earth. So this is a great way to understand what the currents are, how to work with them, to really engage and embrace and experience life processes, to go just beyond the concept of something. And this is, again, part of the challenges we see with a lot of people in our world is they're living in concepts and not actual experiences. And this is part of what happens with our technology age, everything being rooted into AI and all this virtual aspects where people feel like they've had a real experience, but they haven't. They haven't completely had it. And I'm not saying, there isn't a place for technology. It can be a valuable tool for certain things. Certainly here where I'm communicating with you, obviously. But we don't want that to be the only way that we're experiencing things. Um, and I shouldn't even say experiencing because that's really, you know, when we're looking at things through our phone and our computer, it's really not much different than looking at it in a book. It's just a more vivid, pictorial version of a book, really, when we get down to it. So I think that, those are the differences. And on one hand, that's kind of, gives us a little more to work with. On another hand, it can really sway and influence us in different directions. So, as I was looking at this topic and looking at what the influences are coming in for March 2025, and it really came into this key component about wisdom. And I think a lot of people think they have a lot of wisdom, and I'm not going to knock people reading and understanding things because I think that's important as well. But we want to come into realizing that real wisdom is only going to manifest or come to us through real life experiences. I mean, how many times have you said or had somebody say to you that, oh, I understand that? Now, some people, when they say that, they actually do understand it. They actually have the wisdom. They have real life experiences. But a lot of people say, oh, I understand that. And they're trying to just create a connection with you or be empath, um, sympathy, have sympathy for what you're going through or things like that. And they might have knowledge of what you're going through, but they don't have an actual experience a lot of times. And I know I've kind of talked about this in the past, but this is um, this is different than knowledge when we get down to it. And I want to break that down a little bit from a code perspective, the difference between wisdom and the difference between knowledge in there, because there is a difference in there. And when we're getting something through a real life experience, we're getting it through all of our senses. All of our senses are being engaged. Our sight, our hearing, our smell, our touch, everything is being engaged. And when we're engaging through all of those senses, then that's where we actually start to solidify something. When something gets personal to us, that's when it solidifies. You hear all these people that, hey, we got to stand up and get behind this group of people or that group of people or these people who are struggling or whatever. And that's a great thing. I mean, that's a great thing to want to give them support. But how many people actually understand what they're going through? How many people have actually lost everything they've owned to a fire or to something else, or really have that personal firsthand experience in it? And usually there's not a lot. There's some that we all get basic experiences of in life, I think, and we can relate to. But there's a lot of times where we don't, a lot of these causes that we're driven towards, we don't. And that's an interesting piece in there in and of itself. When we are working to really develop true wisdom as part of our spiritual path, uh, we want to keep in mind that we are needing, and part of what comes up again in the March 2025 codes is this aspect of consistently strengthening our skills. And this is going to be a great time to do that. Well, how do we strengthen our skills and things? Well, you're not going to strengthen your skills reading a book or watching a video online. You may get some ideas, you may get the practical foundations or understanding of something, but you don't get the true wisdom of how to do it until you engage that concept into an actual action. You're not going to get the actual wisdom or the true wisdom involved in it. And a lot of people shy away from experiences and things. They want to keep it all intellectual. Part of this, I think, is a way of depersonalizing things. Um, it's a way of not really connecting with things that they're doing. It's like keeping their distance. It's like a protective layer to a certain extent. And so they don't really engage it. And so if they can keep it intellectual, they don't have to actually go through the challenges in there. They don't face the challenges. It's like it for them, it's an easy way to get to someplace. It's like the quick path. It's that shortcut. And the shortcuts don't usually benefit us in the long run. We really can't get the depth of something. We really can't grasp the full aspect. And if you're going to walk on your spiritual path, then you need to get into those deeper layers. And part of getting to the incredible successes along the way is to be able to learn how to face the challenges, go through the trials and errors. And when we go through the trials and the errors, then we learn what works for us personally and what doesn't work for us. And other people can share their experiences and say, hey, here's what worked for me and here's what didn't work for me. And that's great information to take in. But at the same time, taking in that information may or may not work for us because of what our needs are, what our functions are, what we're trying to do. It may be a little bit different in there, but we want to regularly be strengthening our own skills. And when we do this, this also strengthens our ability to stand on our own, and vice versa. If we are going to be strong on our own, then we need to strengthen our skills up so that we don't have to be reliant on other people for other things. And again, I always like to remind people that just because you're strong on your own, that doesn't mean that you cut off interactions from everybody. It's not about this isolation thing or um, always being the tough kid, not needing anything. It's about making yourself in a position where you don't have to be dependent on other people. And when you're in that position, then you can create actually stronger exchanges. You can actually strengthen even from there because you're more open and more receptive to what other people have to say. And you can also discern a little bit better what isn't valuable or what is designed to take advantage of you. And this is a huge thing, especially with people who have been through any trauma in life. There's a lot of guards up about people taking advantage, and yet a lot of times they haven't built that self-sufficiency at the same time. Now, another big thing that shows up in this March 2025 code energy for the month is connecting in with needing to relinquish our desire to control things. And here again, when we go into true wisdom and we're getting real experiences in life, and we're really coming into this full understanding of things, this true wisdom about things, we will find that we don't have to control them. We will find that we don't need to because we've built that self-sufficiency, we've built that strength, we've developed our skills. And when we develop skills and we realize, hey, I got through this challenge, and if I could get through that challenge, I could probably get through this other challenge. And through doing that, what we do is we start to um, release a variety of things. Not only do we relinquish our desire to control things because we don't have to, right? Because we're not dependent on other people for things, um, but we stop battling with our own arrogance, our own pride, and our own greed. And so when we stop doing this and we stop being in this battle with the human self and the soul self and the human self stop struggling against each other, then we can also take in more of the experiences that we're having, and that can really um, take that information or that knowledge that we've been developing and reading about and put it into true practice and true motion. And the more that we can do that, we can sit back and say, yeah, man, that challenge was tough. That one humbled me down a bit. And it's our challenges that help us stay in that humbleness. And when we stay in that humbleness, we actually are strengthening ourselves because we stop taking things for granted in that space. We're letting go of being, again, driven or controlled by external factors, whether that is status, whether that is money, whether that is pure acceptance, whatever that is for us. And so we stop this whole battle. So the more experiences we're getting, the more that wisdom comes into being solidified, and the less that we are controlled by these external factors. Now, another thing about experiences is they help us to um, expose or see what is true and what is false. And in doing that, that can be a really powerful thing as well, because a lot of times when we are first starting out on something, right, we have these dreams and these visions, and we're starting out on our path. And naturally, we're going to draw to those really well-known people, right? I mean, you could probably name a bunch of them that are out there in the self-help industry, and we naturally draw to the work because that's who's promoted right in front of us. That's who we're told to look towards. That's who's pushed in front of our face. But we don't realize that a lot of those people maybe didn't get their successes because they had real wisdom. And the further along you go in your path, and I can laugh about that now, but sitting in the position through all the experiences I've had in life, um, really you start to realize, yeah, these people are just regurgitating the same talking points like the media regurgitates the same talking points in there. And you start to realize these people don't have any real experience. They might have degrees or credentials or whatever, and half of those are probably fake, honestly. But when we get down into it, we start to see what is true and what isn't true. So it's like sitting at home and you think you're watching on TV and you see different things that are happening in other towns and other places and other countries. And there's a part of it that says, wow, that's amazing that that's happening. But then there's a part of it that's so unreal to you because you're not there in the midst of it. You're sitting in the comfort of your own home and watching people be pulled out of their homes for ridiculous things along the way. And so it's our experiences that actually help us understand what is true and what is false. And to be able to see through the people who are um, also working from real life experiences and those that are working just from an image, really. And so if we start to look at this, And we look at these two components of experiences in and of themselves. If we looked at the code pattern of that, experiences actually code out to learning how to stand in truth and integrity, even where there's lies and even where there are forces that are working against you or people working against you and things who are living in lies and distortions or trying to manipulate you in directions. So it's being able to have the strength to to stand to stand strong among the challenges. That's literally the coding of experiences. Now, when we look at the coding of knowledge, now knowledge is really about transition. So it's actually not a an achievement. It's actually not an accomplishment. It is the part of our process where we are processing things. It's the part where we are learning how to think for ourselves and to digest concepts that are out there. But if we are not alert and aware and getting our own experiences as well, then it's very easy for knowledge to be used to manipulate us towards um, what everybody else is doing, to just follow the fad, to just follow whatever the popular thing is or whatever some celebrity is saying or things like that. And so knowledge is an interesting component because it is an important part of the spiritual path. But again, it's this transition from when we just start to become aware of things. Again, it's a concept, it's an idea in our head. It is realizing that, hey, maybe hanging with these certain groups of people who are just swindling people out of things for their own personal gain is not where I want to be. Um, and sometimes we're jolted into knowledge because we're rejected in some way, and sometimes we embrace that path willingly. And it's always about knowledge is always kind of like that stepping stone to move us towards the soul's path. So it is a good thing from that aspect. To know something is to what do I want to say? Is to learn how to learn how to do it, or to engage in a desire to do something um, without any personal gain attached to it. So again, we're learning to release the greed factor, learning to release doing things for the sake of money or material gain. It is about understanding divine service is what it's about. And that can include challenges, that can include blocks and obstacles. So again, to come to know something is this transition. And it's ironic that to know something, that know is part of the root of knowledge. And yet it's actually more connected to wisdom in some ways. So to gain knowledge is not necessarily to know something in there. And that might be a little bit confusing to a certain extent. And then we have wisdom. Now, wisdom in the realm of codes is really about learning from the experiences that we're having. It's about learning what we like, what we don't like, what works, what doesn't work. And it's about realizing the follies of our youth. It's about coming into recognizing and admitting where we've made poor choices along the way, where something didn't benefit us. Um, it's about taking a look at things also, though, in the present moment and not locking people and things just into our past experiences. Again, who we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, not who we are today. And so we need to find this balance. It's about really learning the balance between what we've been through and, okay, I've been through a variety of experiences and I've learned that when people are doing certain things, then that has a certain meaning for me in my life, or I know that that's where I need to keep my caution up or my guard up a bit. But I've also learned when people do certain things that um, that I can trust them, that I can be open with them, that they're not just presenting an image to me of some sort, that they're not just trying to suck me into their program, that they may actually want to provide true help and assistance. But again, that's not something you can just know on the surface. It's something that you have to go through experiences with them. You have to have interactions with them to learn where they actually stand. And that's the part about those experiences, right? You have to, experiences are about interacting with our environment, with people, with, putting that knowledge into motion, right? Um, and so this wisdom, what it then helps us to do is it helps us to have the foundations that we need because of our experiences to make wiser and wiser choices. Because the more we're strengthening our skills, the more wisdom that we're gaining. So the more we can create those favorable paths forward. Yes, there's always going to be a certain amount of challenges that we're going to be faced with. But when we choose wisely, when we look at everything and say, here's where it was then, here's where it is now, does it have a place in the direction I'm going? What is happening here? How do I get these experiences? What experience am I having with this now? Has this person changed? Maybe I'm getting a totally different experience because they've changed, I've changed. And now I need to weigh that out with where they were and what their focus is going forward. But without the experiences, we don't get the real wisdom in there. And it's the real wisdom that takes care of us and allows us to work with foresight. It's what gives us the foundations to say, this works for me. And that can be different for different people. What works for me may not work for somebody else and vice versa. So this is why we can't just rely on somebody else's experiences. We need to go out and get our own experiences, especially if we're trying to create something, especially if we're working on developing successes with something. We've got to get our own experiences. That trial and error process is invaluable. And I can say it with the different things I've had to face in life. It's through trial and error and living through things and being in the experiences that I've learned, okay, here's what's going to keep me warm in winter. Here's what I need to do. Here's what preparations need to be made. Here's where I need to put my focus. Those real life experiences have given me strengths and skills that I would never have gotten otherwise. And when you come down to it and we start to apply it to just about anything and everything in life, do you want somebody who has, for example, the knowledge of flying an airplane? If you're going to take a trip, you're going to fly across the country or to another part of the world. Do you want somebody that has the knowledge of flying an airplane, or do you want somebody that has the wisdom and real life experience of flying an airplane? I don't know about you, but hands down, I want the person who has actual experiences. I don't care what online credential they got that says they're a pilot. I want them to have a certain number of hours flying that airplane. I want them to have a certain skill set and to not just be, at barely skimming through the class skill set. I want them to have a skill set that is exceptional. These sorts of things. So this is important, and this is where we start to differentiate that, and why I'm always encouraging people, look, I can share with you my wisdom and my knowledge and my understanding and, the experiences I've been through, but you've still got to go get your own. And that's important because that's where you learn to shape and shift to customize it to you. And that's where it holds real value. And that's where you go, oh, now I get it. Now I understand it. I've heard you say it. I've heard you say it. Now I just experienced this. Now I really get what you're saying. And, sometimes people don't need a very big or a very major experience to start to get it. But even when they get small experiences, do they really understand what somebody um, is dealing with on a big scale? Let's say somebody has physical challenges, and well, like just recently, I was having problems with both of my hip regions, and I always struggle with one. One always is a little um, not too strong. We'll put it that way. But, in the last week or so, I've had a few days where the other one really wasn't strong. And when I got into that, I mean, that's something that comes and goes from time to time. I've learned to deal with it. I know from experiencing it what I need to do most of the time. But then somebody else will come along and they'll say, and that's something I deal with off and on for life. Like there's a lot of things I deal with off and on for life when it comes to my body. And a lot of people will go, oh, I'm sure that's really miserable. Well, okay, intellectually they have an idea. Okay, that's miserable. And then they'll have one day maybe where their body is out of sorts and they're experiencing what I deal with on almost a daily basis. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe how miserable this is. And it's like, so they're getting a little bit of an understanding what I deal with, but they still don't have that true wisdom of what it's like to deal with on a day-to-day basis, long term, every single day. And so, we want to keep that in mind when we are interacting with people, when we are wanting to be compassionate with whatever they're dealing with, whatever they're going through, and when we're going through our own processes, that, even though we've got an understanding of something, even though we might have a singular experience, and again, a singular experience, what is it there to teach us? It's there to teach us about being more responsible. That's a big part of what our experiences are about, is being responsible, being in integrity, showing up and facing what needs to be handled and what needs to be done. And so looking at these pieces, we want to keep in mind that when we haven't actually stood in somebody's shoes, then we don't really know what it's like. Now, if somebody was to deal with some of my daily things for, say, a year or 2 or 5 years out of their life, I'd say, yeah, they've got some real experiences there. But this is a great way for us to sort out things when we're dealing with people and to, again, get to that truth of things and where people are really at, and to come back in and say, look, what experiences do you have in life? Don't tell me about your credentials, because I know you can go buy a lot of credentials online. If you've got enough money, if you're willing to sell your soul out, so to say, you can be publicized and be famous and big and all of these things. Um, but that doesn't mean that you've got any real wisdom in there. So, and this is where it becomes so important with our ancestral wisdom and our elders and preserving them in our community, because these are the people who have been through real life experiences and really have the wisdom. And instead of looking to these people with maybe a bunch of so-called degrees, which these days becomes less and less meaningful, let's look to the people who have actually lived through things, who have actually experienced them. And that's the wisdom we need to keep alive in our world and our lives and personally. And this is why it's so important for our youth and all generations to keep engaging and interacting with the elders of the community. Okay. People who have been through a variety of things like depression times and Holocaust times and all of these things. None of us were actually there. Most of us were not there. My generation, I wasn't a part of it. We weren't there. But the people who really lived through it, they know what is really happening. And again, as much as we can go by what ancestors may have told us, um, those aren't our real experiences. But we can still take that wisdom, we can still take that knowledge, we can still go in and again, get our own experiences. And this is what happens throughout our world and cycles through, is that we go through periods where things get a little more comfortable, and then we have to come into having some of these challenging and harder experiences because we don't have the wisdom. We don't have the wisdom still there. So again, we've got to do it. And this is why I'm always stressing, get connected with your food, go work on a farm for a while, go see what that's really like. More and more places they're doing exchanges. You can go and stay there for free and work on the farm, and experience and get that connection, what it's like to connect with your food, um, what it's like to really connect with having something. And the more we do that and the more wisdom we can keep alive, actually, the stronger we will be individually, as a community, as society, and as a world, and as souls. And the more that we will keep our soul energy alive. So take care, everybody. Again, if you like this video, subscribe the channel, give it a thumbs up, whatever, leave a comment. I love those comments in there. I know that for a little while I was missing comments, but I've learned how to check them. So I'm checking them now on a regular basis. So hopefully I won't be missing them, since they're not sending me messages when people comment on things, and do that. But also hop over to my website, compassioncodes.com. That link is in the notes below. And check out the Code Journey. Pick up your own edition, because this is going to be very thought-provoking. But the Code Journey is not just about provoking thoughts and thinking and ideas, which are good, but it's also about encouraging you to go out and get those experiences that are going to really move you into wisdom and really just bring in those fulfilling aspects, really bring things home for you. Take care, and I will see you all next month.